This is Gibraltar Today. Professor Daniella Tilbury has been doing environmental work internationally for some years now. It's been a busy few weeks. She delivered the Gladwyn Lecture at the UK Parliament on the Commonwealth's response to sustainable development. She's co-authored a book called Education and Learning for Sustainable Futures, 50 Years of Learning for Environment and Change. And in recent days, she's been in Geneva for the 20th session of the UN Economic Commission for Europe's Steering Committee on Sustainable Development. So let's start in Geneva. Good afternoon, Professor Tilbury. We'll start in Geneva, but more generally, you've been keeping busy.
Hi, Jonathan. Yes, it's an important time at the moment. We've got all these geopolitical tensions that are going on. We've got these conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. We've got, the tariffs that are springing from nowhere. We've got energy instability across Europe particularly. And of course, we have the climate crisis. They're all interlinked. So suddenly we see the political leaders actually responding at the governance level, trying to tackle some of these issues together. And I guess that's why many of us have been quite busy trying to advise in terms of action and policy frameworks moving forward.
So let's start in Geneva, the UN Sustainable Development event. How did that go and what's your role there?
So I'm the UK government focal point there. So I represent the UK government in terms of its progress and implementation of its sustainable development ambitions. But it's really a forum to really work collaboratively across Europe and also the Americas in terms of meeting the Paris Agreement, the Aichi targets on biodiversity, and really talking about how we translate all that high-level stuff into real action at the country level, at the member state level. Because one of the key things we've learned over time is that it's great for us to do individual things and individual actions, right? We all need, I don't own a driver's license, I walk.
As an individual, you mean?
As
we
an
all
individual.
Need to do, okay. Yep.
But it's not enough to just add individual actions up. We need to actually start changing the policy framework. We've seen the impact of Trump and what it's done. And so we need to really, do the changes to build momentum, but we also need to tackle at the very high level the governance changes.
You mentioned the US President Donald Trump is, in broad terms, not good for the environmental movement.
Not at all. In terms of it's removed itself from the Paris Agreement, its US aid funding that has been decreased has also impacted on so many environmental on-the-ground initiatives in Africa particularly, that it has a very detrimental impact. So in this meeting in Geneva, we spoke about what are the good things that are happening, what can we come together to strengthen at a political level to move this agenda forward. And there's things that, we shared examples from Scotland that has developed new legislation in this area, and it's got a new bill, particularly on supporting outdoor engagement and looking at ways in which we connect policies to some real action on the ground. But we learned a lot from other countries.
I was going to say, like sharing of best practices, no?
Sharing of best practices as well as strategically talking about how we influence and continue to inform these global agendas, because we have to keep doing that.
So it's about what policies each individual government might introduce themselves, but also work together to sort of establish international norms?
Yeah, it's about accountability too. So the committee has a particular role on monitoring and evaluation. So, it's about doing these reports. So I coordinated the UK report in 2024, and then we reported on that at this committee. What is the UK doing? Where is it falling short? Where has it done some significant developments? It's about accountability as well as sharing good practice.
That sounds like interesting work. You say you coordinated it. You had to work with the governments of England, Wales, Scotland,
Northern Ireland.
And collate it.
Yeah, and then we opened it up to NGOs, community groups, anyone engaged in the environmental and sustainable development agenda, so that they could put forward their views on how we're progressing on that agenda.
And what was the sort of headline takeaway from that report?
It's going to be released in 6 months, so I can't share the official findings, but it will be combined into a European benchmarking report as well. So you'll see how the UK is doing as against to other countries in Europe.
And that sort of report is really, what role does it play in sort of taking stock and also informing the next steps?
It is a very official document, as you may understand. It has sign-off at the UK government level. The UNEC will promote it, and there is that accountability mechanism that, there will be a lot of reflection and a lot of recommendations in terms of about what should happen next.
All right, so we're talking to Professor Daniella Tilbury about her work at a recent UN event, which was, you mentioned UNECE, the UN Economic Commission for Europe's Steering Committee on Sustainable Development. And we, I think, can talk about your book now, which you have co-authored, Education and Learning for Sustainable Futures. 50 years of learning for environment and change. Sounds like a very significant piece of work to try and look at how education has changed and how it hasn't, no?
Yeah, I mean, the background to the book is important, I think. What happened is, I don't know if you're aware, but in 1972, it was the first time that the UN convened its first environmental meeting in 1972 in Stockholm. So 50 years on from Stockholm, the Swedish government decided it wanted to, again, take stock and say, what's changed? Have we moved on? Has anything happened? Mm-hmm. And so it asked me to actually do a piece of research focused on the educational aspect of that. So there were 6 contributors, and my responsibility was what has changed in the last 50 years in terms of the education and learning. But when we talk about education and learning, we're not talking just about schools. We're talking about organizational development, business corporations and how they've changed, professional development. We're talking about systems, educational systems and structures, examination processes, all of that stuff.
Quite and so far-reaching and wide, in scope.
And it was global. So when they approached me, I realized this was too much of a big task. So I then asked my colleague Arjen Wals from the Netherlands and Thomas McIntyre for Argentina to come in and to help me gather the data, because it's an evidence-based report. The report was presented in Sweden at the UN conference of Stockholm Plus 50, and then Routledge, who is a global publisher, said, I want to print this.
It's nice, leading publisher, no, of academic materials.
Yeah, and so we then took another 2 years to just add more evidence
Take it from a report to a book.
Yes, that's right. And the Dutch government liked it so much that it then funded for the book to be free.
Perfect.
So it's available for free, online, open access to anyone. And we launched the book at the steering committee in Geneva because they celebrated 20 years of change in sustainability. And it seemed very timely to just share the book at that moment in time and celebrate some successes and look to the future. Yeah,
it's important, isn't it, to celebrate the successes. If somebody's just joining us on Radio Gibraltar on GBC Television, we're speaking to Professor Daniella Tilbury about a book that she's just published. And in short, this one has been published, so I can ask you, what were the sort of takeaways? How much has changed in the way we teach about sustainability?
About where we learn sustainability. We learn and perceive it very differently. So we did a decade-by-decade analysis, and we went from thinking that if we were in the wilderness and connected with nature, then the world would change, which of course is very naive. Then we went to the process.
Do it, but it's not going to change the world.
No.
It's good for you, but it's not going to change the world.
It's good for well-being, it's mental health, but it's not necessarily good for changing the world. And equally, we went through a phase of, let's get the science right, and then everybody will change and respond accordingly. And again, it's a story of course, the science plays an important role. It doesn't really do it. And we went through all that decade by decade until we've come to now the AI and digital technologies, and questioning the role that the new technologies are playing in creating a different future to the one we have now that is more sustainable.
Very interesting. And it takes us nicely to the Gladwyn Lecture, which you delivered in the UK Parliament, the Commonwealth's response to sustainable development. How did that go? I know that AI featured as one of the talking points, no?
Yes, it was. Absolutely. I mean, the Commonwealth lecture I delivered was in the Houses of Parliament, and it was an annual lecture that celebrates what happens in the Commonwealth. And the key message there was that we find examples in Uganda, in Botswana, in Fiji, in different parts of the Caribbean, in India and Barbados, of where artificial intelligence, the new virtual realities are transforming and bringing hope to communities that have been significantly affected by climate change.
So good. A nice, hopeful note to finish on. But I have one more question.
Sure.
Do you miss Gibraltar politics?
Yes and no, I follow it. Of course I follow it. I mean, my engagement with it was very much about wanting to improve sustainable development and address environmental priorities. So I'm sort of still doing that and continue to work in that area.
Wonderful. Well, we wish you every success in the work that you have ahead. Sounds like you're going to be keeping busy with your international environmental work, and we look forward to hearing more in due course. Professor Daniella Tilbury, thank you for joining us.
Jonathan, thank you.